Hello dear friends, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you are all staying safe and healthy. I wanted to bring you a very different type of offering today. This is going to be a tarot reading for the Conflux, and I would like to define Conflux here as maybe the verbal state of the collective. It's meant to mean we are all changing together. It can be used interchangeably with collective, but to me it has that more active connotation and focus on change. So this is a completely general reading. It does not cover anything like relationships, job, career advice, anything like that. That's not really what's being touched on here. This is a focus on the energies that are currently moving through us as, the planet as a whole, our beautiful spaceship Earth, and how to deal with these changes gracefully, and whether this as best we can. So this is advice about that for each of the signs. Take it as it resonates, but please, this is only for sun sign, is the intention. That's what I meditated on beforehand, and what will probably be the most accurate. So sun sign only. I am going to be reading 3 Tarot Classic System cards for each sign as a general read on the energies that are moving through. I will be also pulling a Montegna Tarot card, which is a kind of different system. It's based on Renaissance, alchemical, classicist sort of motifs, and it's meant to be sort of as an advice in responding to change. And then at the end, I will be pulling an oracle card from the deck that I wrote, because it was always kind of designed with this type of synergy in mind, to be able to mediate with different decks. And then the unique feature of my system is that we're going to be taking a look at the total energy, all of the elemental representation, and total up the cards. And what you get is a result story or narrative that I will read for all of us that sort of indicates the vision of sort of the inertia that we've built up and the direction that we're heading right now. So I've never done this before. We're going to try something totally new here, and I hope that you enjoy and get some benefit out of it, and that it helps give a little insight or direction onto how to cope with this on sort of that meta level, rather than focusing too much on being a personal reading or something pertinent to your current situation or people that you're dealing with. Okay? So keep that in mind. First, of course, is Aries. We're going to pull 3 cards of Tarot Classic. We have the 6 of Swords, the 2 of Swords, and the Queen of Wands. And we will also be reading reversals today. And this is the Tarot of Atlantis for anybody curious. I'll put links in the description if that's of interest to anybody. So, so not surprising, just coming off of Aries season, I see that represented directly here. Standing in power, sitting in the fire energy, and that very active response to changes that are coming our way. But there's a little bit of maybe animosity or resentment or conflict coming from the 6 and the 2 of Swords. I feel like there's a pressure to sort of power through, keep making things happen, keep maybe fanning the flames, or making major changes in one's own life in response to not being able to control what's going on in the external. And I see that feeling a little bit of resentment here. I think the key for Aries is going to be obviously do what makes you feel powerful, starting up new things just to sort of spark something or initiate a change, or exert a lot of dominance over the planes that you currently have control over, which is pretty much only your own life. Make sure that you're not doing it to the point of exhaustion, and that you're not doing it in such a combative way that you are butting heads with those around you. But if it's making you feel good and it's helping you process the energy and giving you outlets, particularly creative outlets, of course, to cope and process your own emotions, fuel that, clearly. But just be a little bit mindful of the side effects that that might be having on the others around you in your life, close or remote. So those are the classic cards, and now we're going to pull a Montague card. Oh, one of my personal favorites. We have Calliope, who is the eldest muse. And I'm going to go ahead and read directly from the booklet, just because I really haven't used this set in a very long time, and I want to give you the full benefit of the uniqueness of this system, but also I'll give some of my personal insight just from the study of mythology. So Calliope is the muse of poetry and kind of epic history. We would think of things like the Odyssey, the Iliad. Poetry meant something a little bit different back in the day. In the classic Greek times, all of those sort of epics were considered to be a type of poetry, and it's the type that she rules over. So that has to do with sort of the meta-narrative and the overarching story of the collective and how history is going to be recorded. So it might be that Aries people are kind of trying to figure out what the takeaway is from what's happening and express that or catalog it some way. That's just my interpretation from study, but let's take a look at what it actually says as well. Calliope. Psychology. Understand the origin of your sadness. Very timely. Very good. I like that energy. I feel like that's a good energy for all of us to kind of sit in, and maybe we did here during the Aries season. Now that we're coming into Taurus season, though, let's see how that is moving along. We have the Lovers, the Ace of Cups, and the Ace of Swords in reversed. And that to me immediately speaks of a battle of heart versus mind, and maybe ruminating thoughts, really running counter to intuition or emotions. And it looks like that's very much in the field of love and intimate relationships, being that the Lovers popped out first. Yeah, so that speaks to me of being a little torn about which one to listen to, the head or the heart. And yeah, maybe trying to understand what love means given all the things that are being revealed. I've noticed a lot, just people who would normally be very close, being divided not over so much just what's happening, but over scarcity mindset, an emotional scarcity mindset, I think. People becoming hostile towards one another that otherwise were friends, and sort of this intense defensiveness, I guess, that I'm noticing a lot in interactions between people. I mean, we're seeing extremes at both ends through all of this. The people who were already in kind of a headspace to step up, take roles of leadership, react in a way that would benefit the collective, are already stepping up and doing so with flying colors. And the people that were maybe already experiencing a little bit of a compromise to their integrity, having difficulty navigating these energies. So I see kind of both here for Taurus. I see people who were already putting in the emotional labor, putting in the work, and trying to understand what their needs are in relationships, romantic or family or otherwise, but identifying the parameters of abundance in social interactions and emotional exchanges. I feel like the people who have already really put in the work to do that are experiencing kind of an abundance right now, and messages of love here with the Ace of Cups. I think maybe that comes in the form of a lot of daily reminders of what would we call it, gentle, true spirit, and sort of a lens or a preference to see things, see the kindness, see the good, see the beauty. But with this, the Ace of Wands in reverse. I see that as like a counter narrative. In the image, it actually shows a man carving. I'll put it up right so you can see. Carving into stone, setting in stone, this idea. And it does happen to be a bull in the picture, if that resonates with anyone. I feel like that has to do with you grappling with society's definitions of success, maybe. Or society's definitions of abundance or what should be strived for, running really counter to your gut intuition. Total side note, just because it's making me feel this way. I'm reading the story of Bee right now, which is the continuation from Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. I highly recommend that everybody go and read that. It's very relevant and timely and meta right now. It was written in the 90s, but it just as easily could have been yesterday. And it talks a lot about the narratives that we have in society, the two main concepts being the takers and the leavers. And leavers are those who live in the hands of the gods. And it's not just to be taken as like a primitive society, but it's societies that either rely a lot more on foraging, or they have more sustainable agricultural practices. Basically, it's any that don't practice what would be called totalitarian agriculture, which is a system that we use today. And in the book, it's postulated that that's really the split off of where the colonists' sort of manifest destiny comes from, and this right to dominate all life on Earth, that we, as a modern society, especially in Western culture, really have taken very much to heart. And I think that this is kind of this conflict with that concept and this inner intuition that humans are fundamentally good, that they are fundamentally kind, that they are fundamentally generous. And I see that a lot in the Taurus spirit in general. But I see that really kind of being tested now. Maybe because there's this thing set in stone that is running so counter to the abundance mindset. And so I see Taurus trying to navigate this energy and get away from that through love, through an abundance of love, through a generosity of spirit. And I think that's a really great energy to sit in as well, and all of us could take away from that here in Taurus season. And obviously be taking that time to fill your own cup and make sure that you're doing proper self-care and all of those kind of things, but also keep in mind that love, it's a positive sum game. The more you give, the more you get. So practicing generosity of spirit and just well-wishing. Don't spread yourself thin materially, obviously, if you don't have an excess right now, but kind of take an inventory of the things that you could do, the simple acts of kindness that don't cost anything. That, I think, is the advice given here. And for those that are just sitting in this straight up, lover's energy, I love the picture here is of two men wrestling. And that reminds me of a Joseph Campbell concept about the two men who were brothers, but they didn't know that they were brothers. And they were fighting against each other and striving for honor out of respect for one another. And to the observer, seeing them combat in this way with so much love, they were one. I really love that. Anyway, these are getting ranty. I was hoping to keep them short, but we're just going to let it happen how it happens. And the Mantegna card that I have pulled is Iliaco, or Intellect. Yeah, there's that head over heart. I think the gut is going to go with heart. This isn't necessarily something that we can think our way out of. I think it's something that we can love our way out of, though. Let's see here. Ah, yes. Intellect, doubts. Always act knowing that you may make a mistake. Yeah, so that speaks to a need to trust, a need to sit in abundance energy and realize that it's not a mistake because it's a positive sum game. So any extra that you extend, like, it might seem wasteful for the time being, but by sitting in that abundance energy, you can always generate more. So there's Taurus. Moving on to Gemini. Ooh. Nice. Weird. Okay. We have 10 of Pentacles. We have 2 of Wands. And we have 10 of Cups reversed. Interesting. Okay. So 10 of Pentacles usually means like a completion or a state of final abundance, opulence, and things like that. And we see it upright, followed by this 2 of Wands in reverse, which I feel is like this inability to agree. I think it's carrying on of that similar energy from Taurus, where it's like inability to agree what success means, or what opulence means, or what providence means, even. I'm getting the word providence. And then this 10 of Cups in reverse definitely speaks to Gemini grappling with the duality between this plentifulness that seems so obvious to them, but being maybe canceled out, possibly by an overabundance also of emotion. So I think Geminis are sitting in an energy of there's so much both of drama and of things that are available. And there's this disconnect in between them of an inability for one to bridge the gap to the other. Yeah, inability to bridge. So much. So I'm getting just like an overwhelm, or like there's so much flying around and it's just not going to the places that it needs to. And of course, from the Victory Condition series, I highly recommend everybody go back and watch that, because this type of reading is meant to be addressing those questions rather than the personal ones. So in terms of the mission, or what Gemini as a group is supposed to be pursuing, it definitely is an energy of mediation and organization. And it's interesting we don't see any air element here. Yeah, so maybe that indicates lack of overabundance of material, overabundance of emotional, and lack of intellectual, which would usually be the comfort zone for Gemini. Yeah, I'm getting overwhelmed, put out of comfort zone, unable to bridge and mediate. So it's possible that Geminis are very stressed out by this right now. I just keep getting that, like, it's obvious. It's obvious. Yeah, I think that the overabundance of emotion is making everyone really uncertain and uncomfortable, and it would be much preferential to deal with this in a different capacity. So we might be feeling very stuck and unable to bridge and unable to move forward. Let's see what the Vonnegut card says. Of course. Temperance. Which, of course, is a Tarot Classic card as well, but here it has a different meaning. All of the Vonnegut cards, for a little bit more background on them, have to do with muses, virtues, pursuits, in that very classical Da Vinci sort of mode. Beautiful imagery. So, of course, temperance usually means moderation, mediation, ability to find balance. And in this set, prevention is the best cure. I wonder what that's about. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. It's obvious. Prevention is the best cure. It may be that the Geminis are really focused on this wave of happenings being part of a larger pattern and being more concerned with the infrastructure of response, and why weren't, for example, why weren't things stocked? Why weren't things prepared? Why were we not more ready? It's obvious what needs to be done, and it's obvious that the conditions that we have were going to be creating problems. So I see a lot of frustration there. But hang on, we're going to get some advice for the collective afterwards, so I can feel a little bit of maybe some argumentation going on. Please don't get in fights with strangers on the internet. It's not worth your time and energy. That's for everyone, not just Gemini. So, moving on, we have Cancer. Nice. We have the High Priestess, followed by the King of Cups in reverse, and the Three of Pentacles. Very interesting. High Priestess immediately it's a energy of transmutation. It's an energy of taking one thing and upgrading it, or changing it, or moving some things around, right? The Magician is like straight manifestation, but the High Priestess is like editing, analyzing, seeing maybe what could be improved by removing some portions. I see it as like a very editing energy. I'm getting cutting things out, making space for what's more useful. I'm getting that kind of energy from it. Here with the King of Cups in reverse is, just emotional outburst, emotional overwhelm, acting out of cruelty and emotion. And the imagery is quite comical on the Three of Pentacles. It's actually showing a man chasing away a thief. So this has to do with cutting out energies that are draining on you, and things that are inciting this heavy emotional reaction, or this overreaction. A need to chase away things that are draining you, or stealing your energy and attention away. But I see a desire to do that in a transmutational way, or a shift rather than a complete detachment or cutout. And maybe those two energies are at odds within you right now. Because, kind of side note, I feel like there's this narrative in the collective for, cutting out toxic people, cutting out things that don't serve you anymore, and, just throw it away, get rid of it. But it's interesting now. That's been really the tone, I think probably for the last year. That's been like, this is how you respond to problems in your life. You just get rid of them, ghost them, whatever. And I think that was a phase that we needed to go through, and there was a lot of house cleaning that did need to be done, and there were probably some really positive resulting severances that happened as a result of that. But it's interesting how the occurrences that we're having and how the energies that we're moving through right now are kind of now challenging that narrative, like, this isn't the complete answer. This isn't the appropriate response every single time. And while it's good to do when it's just so obvious and you can recognize, like, hey, this is really bringing me down, being a problem, now that we're kind of being forced to slow down and sit with our feelings and stay in place, I think it's really challenging this idea that we ever can fully disconnect with something or cut a toxic person out, or that there won't be ripples and other ramifications elsewhere in the collective. I don't think that you can ever fully just walk away from something. We have these karmic contracts with one another, and we have the results and the, you are free to take whatever action you want in this life. We have free will. We have this sovereignty, but you are not free from the consequences of your actions and the impact that they might be having on other people. And I see this as kind of, there's some positive energies to it, but for some reason I'm, usually a High Priestess is a really great card, but I'm feeling that the energy is like having trouble figuring out how to transmute rather than how to surgically remove. Yeah. We have such invasive intervention style medicine. We talked about that, I think, in the Virgo video. But it can do a lot more harm than good, and especially in complex systems, we don't really know the results of removing a thing in its entirely, what consequences that might have on the rest of the ecosystem. So I see this really challenging, maybe stuck energy for you as well, of like knowing intuitively, knowing deep down that your magic and your medicine has more to do with ability for transmutation and for changing something from a lower state into a higher state through an emotional process. Because usually, the King of Cups would be the ability to process emotions in a healthy way and have some reign over them, being able to rein them in. But in reverse, I think it's calling that into question and looking at, why am I not able to do that? What is going on? So maybe there's a lack of information about transmutation technique, or I just keep hearing how do how do I shot web, Spider-Man? It's that kind of this is obvious again. This is clearly a skill that I would like to have. This is something I usually am able to do, but because of the way that everybody else has been acting in the energy that we were moving through of this purge kind of energy last year, it's really running at odds with the valuation of that skill. I'm feeling like a lack of valuation of ability to emotionally regulate as an individual, lack of society's emphasis and value of that skill is really creating some cognitive dissonance and some defensiveness, because there's an instinct to chase the thief away, or to enact justice or lash out, or if you're not able to recover what was taken, cut your losses. I'm hearing cut your losses. So the Montaigne card. Cosmico. The totality of the system. That's absolutely right. Let's see what the booklet says. I apologize that a lot of the booklet's Italian, so I'm having trouble just jumping right to the correct spot for each one. I'll try to get good about that. Oh, yeah. Rebirth. View the world with new eyes. I think it's a call to shift that perception away from that mode of kind of the last year. I think it's very much this collective feeling that it's important to learn lots of different responses, because different situations call for, a contextually appropriate response. And I think we really narrowed our focus kind of recently to this one mode of response being correct. And I think there might have been an effectiveness of everybody kind of sitting in that energy and being in agreement about it, because it granted permission for that response to be an appropriate way to react. But I think we might have overdone it as a collective. I think having that be the overwhelming response all the time created a lot of really toxic behaviors, including but not limited to ghosting. And you can't ever really ghost. That person is still alive. That person is still, their energy is out there. If you do that, the only way that you could really do that is to then somehow subconsciously accept yourself that that person is essentially dead to you now. And that's not the reality of the situation or the energy. Sometimes, when the situation has gone that far south and there is abuse and there is, real harm, you have to do that. It is necessary. Surgery is necessary when it advances to such a state. But that's not the appropriate response to every single situation. Not everybody is toxic. Not everybody is out to get you, or a thief, or a leech on your energy. Like, they're going through a personal journey as well, and there's more complexity to the situation. So I think maybe that's it ties to the Cancerian mission of informing the rest of the collection the need and the importance of emotional regulation. So it might be that Cancers are struggling to articulate that on a personal level, or express that, or vocalize. Because also, we're in such a state of flux with the available avenues for self-expression and the way that those work. And we've been in this mode of extreme monetization kind of during the same period, really. There's been a push of, your personal message, your personal branding, getting your side hustle going and all of that being something that should be at the center of your focus. But we ran into problems with that because, back to what Gemini is struggling with, distribution, right? It became a very cutthroat, competitive thing, and a lot of bad karma was generated by people lashing out at one another, theft of ideas, just general hyper-competitive attitude in all of these platforms. And the algorithms of the platforms have only fueled that kind of bad behavior. And a lot of people, I think, are really launching into this side hustle mentality without having gone through the process of meditating on what it means to them, what it is that their gift is to bring to the world, what it really will be like to have that become a lifestyle, to be what they're doing every day, and feeding a lot of energy into, even if it now is more digital content, be it, videos, photo shoots, whatever, when you're spending that much time on it, you have to realize that you're making a commitment for that to become your identity and your lifestyle. And it's the same way as if you work retail or something else as well, right? If you're doing that enough, if you're spending 40 or more hours a week, it takes a part of you. And you have to be very careful, because there's this siren's allure of the startup or the side hustle, where it's like, oh, but you own it, so you can do whatever you want. You do it your way, and it'll be more fulfilling to you personally. But not necessarily, not if you have bought too hard into this scarcity competitive mindset, and it becomes just another rat race that you're running against someone else, and you're not speaking your truth forward and doing it out of a real love for what you're doing and a sense of value that it will bring to other people. So be very, very careful about monetization methods of that right now. Cancer. Is it just going to ramp up like that? Each one will be longer. I love it. Okay. Moving on. To Leo, we have the Eight of Cups. We have the Queen of Cups. We have the Temperance in reverse. I think the isolation might be hitting Leos particularly hard right now. Missing celebrations, missing gatherings, missing the face-to-face social contact. But I see a positivity of being able to navigate that with the Queen of Cups here. That energy of, again, emotional regulation, sovereignty, those kind of things. But I see it, the strong emphasis and a strong desire. It may be that Leos are feeling a lot of pressure right now to respond to that lack and to come in with solutions for alternate ways to capture that spirit of celebration and that spirit of gathering. I see that really strongly presented here because we have the Temperance in reverse. which each of these cards has a little bit, it's not going to focus because it's just a phone, but it's showing the flooded Chinampa kind of style terrace farming. It wouldn't be terrace farming if it's horizontal, but that type of thing. Because this is the Tarot of Atlantis, so it has a lot of imagery that's kind of speculating on the Atlantean lifestyle. I just love this deck. I don't know, I love the art style. But usually that style of farming and that like mentality of farming has to do with really intentionally designed compartmentalization of crops, right? You have really limited land mass with which to farm on. You get a lot of benefits from this type of farming system. This is going to be a little bit rambly because it has to do with engineering that I'm working on right now. But the advantage of a floating farm system like this is that you have less land mass overall. You're not necessarily creating some crazy surplus like you might be able to if you just had infinite space to farm, but that's sort of what we're talking about. It's the opposition of that infinite growth mindset, because abundance is not the same as infinite growth, right? We have limitations on our growth cyclically, and we have limitations because we are a complete ecosystem. We have only the resources that are available within the whole of our planet Earth and what solar energy it's able to take on seasonally. So when you have these floating islands, it's like pick your battles, pick what's the priority, pick what you want to be able to have to eat, and it will be bountiful within the parameters of that space that's been allotted to it. So I'm getting a big energy of like, pick what's important, and Leo is saying celebration is important, togetherness is important, gatherings. I'm also getting kind of a vibe of family and toasting. I don't know if anybody likes like reggae. the song Toast by Coffee comes to mind. And I felt really dumb the other day because I was listening to it. And all of a sudden it hit me like, oh no, she's talking about like toasting with a cup, not toast. I don't know sometimes. But I love that song. And it's that gratitude is a must. Celebration. Acknowledgement of abundance. If you don't acknowledge the abundance and show gratitude, it withers, because it's very easy, if you're not doing that regularly, to fall into that scarcity mindset, or to fall, I'm hearing like fall into malcontent, fall into ingratitude. And the social ramifications of being in a space of ingratitude are, pathological, right? If you pathologize yourself, if enough people do that, you form a pathological society. And if enough people do that, it's hell on earth. Jordan Peterson. Yeah. That's what I'm getting. Is that we did not appropriately partition our priorities. We did not cultivate the right things. And now we're experiencing an opulence overall. There's a lot of energy in the system, but it's not the right energy, and we haven't shown gratitude, so a lot of it's going to waste. I'm feeling a frustration that I think Leo is sitting in an energy of frustration because they really feel this is an opportunity. They really feel this is a positive thing because they're seeing this as like, great, we have an abundance of the thing that we value the most, that we wanted the most. Now that everybody has so much time on their hands, normally this is something that we would be putting to great use, partying and having great memories together and forming memories and celebrating and having a good time and enjoying, the fruits of the labor and the harvest. It's got this very, I just see like the summertime, the sun is high, barbecue, like that whole togetherness, eating together, sharing. And there's such a frustration because they're like, if we were able to do this the whole time, if we were able to have this the whole time and take this kind of time off, why couldn't we have just had more time off built in? Why couldn't we have just... There's a real nostalgia and like a real regret that I'm feeling, even though, you know, these are positive energies, the Queen of Cups and the Eight, but there's a sense of nostalgia here because it's like there's a bit of regret because Leo feels like, why couldn't we have this before? All of the parties that I've turned down because I had to work, you know, all of the things that I did show gratitude for, you know, that I did show up for, that I did give thanks for, you know, all of those times that I wanted to be in that. And it feels very bittersweet because we're not able to use this time for that. And they would have wanted to be able to do that in the past. Try not to get too caught on the nostalgia of it, and keep rolling forward with that energy of gratitude now, Leo. I know it's really difficult because it's not in the form that you want. But let's see what the Antagonist Tarot says. Chronicle, absolutely. Chronicle. I know what this is going to say. But I'm also not, like, brave enough to just spurt it out right now because, as I said, I haven't done this in a really long time. Pride. Sensitivity. Don't let sensitivity blind reason. Chronicle also has this sort of time association. That's what I was going to say before. It's got this this timeline sort of energy to it, and it shows in the imagery. You definitely can't see this, but there's a little dragon that is devouring its tail. So that's the symbol of the Ouroboros, the snake that eats itself. It's saying it's not over. It's not over. This is really frustrating right now because you would have wanted to have that before. And people might be feeling a heightened sense of loss. Maybe it's talking about the heightened sensitivity because there's such a sense of loss. Because, you know, for those of us who have lost people, there's an energy right now that's really heavy of missing people and wanting to have had more time. On a personal note, like I've recently been thinking a lot of, not to get too morbid or anything, but I had a loss in our family, and I had a frustration about not being able to go to a service, not being allowed to. We're on full lockdown here, so it's like we can't even have funerals, and it really brought up a lot of feelings of shame and guilt for me, even though they're completely irrational. Like, I've already sat with it, I've dealt with it, don't worry about me or anything like that. And if you are struggling with that self blame, I do really highly recommend the work of Brene Brown. That was very helpful for me. But it's like a lot of the funerals that, like, I wish I had gone to now. It wasn't that many that I missed, but I was a child. It's like, rationally, it wouldn't have happened, right? But I still feel as an adult now kind of that pang of regret of, like, I value that now. I understand that now because it's been deprived. I understand now that we are not able to hold services and go through at the very least, the conventionally available sort of mourning process. Having that taken away really makes you miss what was available in the past a lot more. So sorry if that's, you know, dark, but that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting for Leo is being deprived of those things now gives a really heightened sensitivity to the value and the gratitude that was in the past, and how just like a resentment energy of, like, well, you know, I would have appreciated it, I would have put it to use. So it's good that you're feeling your pride, you're feeling yourself, your integrity, your values in that way. It's good that you're viewing yourself that way, Leos, because it's showing your priorities, it's showing your boundaries. That's what I'm seeing from the Temperance in reverse. Like, you are very much self-identifying. Just try to take some care not to take it entirely too personally, because this is something that's happening to all of us. But I feel this like hostility of like, I told you this was important. I've been trying to say this whole time how precious life is, how important these things were to me, how much I get this feeling of like, I invited everybody to that party and nobody came, and now that we can't have parties, how does that feel? But don't sit too much in resentment. You take that lesson away of like, it is possible to change. That's what I want for everyone to really embrace from this collective reading, is like, change is possible. We can create the world that we want. And it's good that some of the signs are taking this time to reflect and formulate that value system and express that gratitude for the things that are important to them and identify those. So take time to do that, but do take some care not to become hypersensitized to it, if that makes sense. Moving on to Virgo. And I'm only pulling from the one deck and using all of the cards because for me, we're reading this as an enclosed biome. So you wouldn't have repeated cards. I hope that makes sense. It's not conventional. It's not the way everybody else reads tarot. So if you're looking for that type of reading, there are lots of really great, lovely people here on YouTube who do those style of readings. I wanted to bring this forth as a unique type of offering that was relevant to the theme of the mission, the theme of what am I supposed to be doing right now, because I think that a lot of people might be struggling with that and finding a direction. It's seeing a long term, right? Because it's very difficult to even see a future right now with things so subject to change. But I feel like that's valuable and that's good because it gives us some time to sit and think about the changes that we would want to see. So that's the goal of this reading very much. And for Virgo, we have the Knight of Cups in reverse, we have the Three of Cups, and we have the Five of Cups. A lot of feels going on. A lot of emotional energy. Let's talk about it. So, I think I know where this is going. So the Knight of Cups is in reverse is bad news. It's like bad emotional news, bad juju, bad drama. It might be that probably everyone with, I believe it's Pluto retrograde, is feeling a little bit of that return cycle. People might be coming out of the woodwork to contact you and be like, oh, well, the world is ending, so let me just lay it on you how I really feel. And some of that is kind of dramatic and heavy. I've experienced that myself, very much so, especially now that, everybody's got so much time on their hands to go and make a little mischief, and some of the confessions may be deeply unappreciated and unwanted. Please, everyone, side note, it's a really good time to work through things and process what happened in the past and try to come forward and make some peace with some people and speak your truth. Definitely a good thing to be doing, but please, before you do that, could you just, when you're sending someone a message, be like, hey, can I just make sure you're in an appropriate headspace or you're in a good place right now for me to tell you something, to become really vulnerable with you and tell you something really personal. Just check in with the person first if it's someone that you haven't talked to in a long time, be it ex or family or whatever. Don't just launch straight in like, hey, by the way, I wanted to tell you this is how it went down on my end. Do that thing, but ask permission. Just make sure nothing else super extra tragic has happened to them earlier in the day, because one, you're not going to get the response that you're hoping for, and two, that's just a compassionate thing to do. So please, everyone, in your communications, proceed with a compassionate way. In a compassionate way. Yeah, I'm seeing that. Bad news. Bad news and indulgences. I'm hearing people asking you for indulge me, humor me, put up with me, tolerate me. That's what I'm seeing from the 3 and 5 of Cups together here. It's maybe people are being very not enforcing, imposing, sorry, imposing with their emotional needs. And you might be being asked to do a lot of emotional labor right now, which might be violating some of your boundaries, is what I'm getting. Making you uncomfortable, especially if these are, these cards' imagery is particularly kind of centered around sexuality. So especially if this is something like that, it's not the headspace that you want to be in, is what I'm getting. Like, you don't even really want to talk about it. You don't even really want to deal with it. And while you do still have personal feelings as a human being, as we all do, to deal with, and like you want to sort of be available to get the benefit of the karmic clearing that could come from really vulnerable and honest communication, it's also super emotionally draining. And I'm feeling like it's like tugging you into like this space you don't even want to be in. Like, you don't want to deal with that right now because you're very busy crystallizing something for yourself. I hear like a very like chrysalis energy. Like, you are very much in that energy of transmutation. I think you've got kind of an energy that Cancer wants to be able to tap in right now, with the ability to like mutate or transform, right, from caterpillar to butterfly. I feel like you are in the chrysalis right now, and you very much want to be left alone because you've reduced yourself to your basic parts. And you've done a really good job of dismantling old belief systems that aren't serving you, but you really needed to create a space for yourself that was safe to do that. And I'm hearing that, like, Virgo in particular is dealing really well with the aspect of isolation, and was like, yes, this is an energy I know how to deal with. This is a tool that I know how to use, and I know what I want to do with it. And I'm feeling like you're very secure and self-deterministic in this, but that outside impositions, especially emotional, are detracting from what you're trying to cultivate. Yeah, this one feels pretty cut and dry. Need to not be defensive necessarily, but like a need to insulate, a need to set boundaries, a need to cut certain conversations off because they are not particularly fruitful. I'm hearing fruitful. You have a very clear vision of abundance right now, of what success means for you. And it doesn't have anything to do with sort of that other energy that I was feeling of getting some hustle going or getting some side thing going. There's an integrity to you in this hermit space of, you know exactly what it is that you're supposed to be growing right now, but you also have a level of emotional maturity where it's like, it's going to take a lot of time. And in the collective at large, it feels like you're very much on your path and in tune with this mission, because the matter of healthcare affects Virgos so intimately, so specifically. It feels similar to what was going on for Leo, where it was like, I've been trying to tell you how important this was for such a long time. It's a little bit different, but it's sort of in that vein where it's like, I called it, I told you that this was important. We needed to put more into this, and we didn't spend the time and the energy. We didn't lean in when we had the opportunity. So now that we're all having to pull back, Virgo is leaning in to the pullback, if that makes sense. Leaning into the isolation for the purpose of cultivating self. Like, maybe not even... It's not systematic. I think a lot of the other signs, Mercury energy under Gemini in particular, was really screaming this at me, where it was like very concerned with the meta, very concerned with implementing new systems and, getting new platforms online and all those kind of things, very structural, almost a Saturnian energy, which makes sense. Whereas Virgo is right now sitting very much in an understanding and an inner peace of, we can't fix the world until we fix ourselves, right? We have to look inward to find the answers, and they're all in here. And Virgo has a very intuitive sense that's where some answers for themselves lie, and they're willing to put the time in on it. They recognize that there is time to be put in now, and they're making the most of it very much. Feeling that. But in order to do so, there have to be healthy boundaries. I think any of this bad news, any of these unwanted messages can completely throw that whole process into jeopardy. One of the anecdotes that was going on in the story of B last night was talking about a scientist who was looking at butterflies that were metamorphosing and looking at the chrysalises of a particular generation of them, and he found a bunch of them, I think, in a field, and he gathered them up, and he watched the first one hatch out, and how agonizing the process was, and, that it was struggling so much. And so, he watched it, and it did its cycle, and it flew away, and as the other ones started to begin to crack their shells and bust out, he thought, oh, well, I'll just help a little, I'll just intervene a bit and help them along. So he went and he pulled apart the chrysalis a little bit to make it easier for them to climb out. Well-intentioned, well-meaning, but this ended up being very catastrophic for those butterflies. They basically shriveled up and died. They didn't end up fully forming into butterflies at that time, because there's something about the process of struggling and pulling out of the chrysalis and having to break it yourself that causes the right blood flow that's needed for the wings to fully open up. And without the struggle of breaking out, that the stimulation of that pain is what actually allows the butterfly to fully form. And that's a whole mood. That's a whole thing right now, because we've had this desire, I think, societally, to sort of make certain things easier for people. And some people maybe have benefited from that, and some people needed certain pressures to be removed, right? Nobody should have to be struggling for their very basic livelihood or their basic needs being met, right? That's something that we all need to come together and agree on as a society. But there, I think, are certain comforts or certain struggles that we have had removed for us that are making us soft, or they're making us unable to fully form ourselves. And I think Virgo knows that. They know something about that in particular, and they understand and have accepted they've voluntarily accepted their sacrifice and chosen to bear their burden gracefully and with dignity to the best of their ability, and they've accepted the vulnerability of life and understand that this unique circumstance is the ideal condition for them to cope with that and sit with that, even though they know it will be hard. But then there's all these things trying to tug at the chrysalis and make things easier, or interfere with a natural process. So they feel something very artificial or unnatural happening by these interventions. But at the same time, their basic human compassion and empathy is causing them to want to deal with the problems as they're coming up. They don't want to, shy away from them or not deal with those feelings. But at the same time, it's being very counterproductive because they have a sense of what they need to be doing. Yeah. Moon. The moon. This shows the chariot of the moon. Very beautiful. Let's just verify, just so I'm not... Of course, it means something very similar to what it would in Tarot Classic, but I want to make sure that it's not something specific to this deck as well. Imagination. Analyze dreams to discover yourself. Yeah. Introspection. Personal introspection. Personal feelings. Not necessarily wanting to process those of others. The mirror. The world is a mirror right now for you, I think. Very nice. I think we could all get a good takeaway from the Virgo energy right now. That's some serious growth. Personal strength and growth. Love it. Cheers. By the way, this is your friendly reminder, if you haven't done so yet today, go get some water. Make sure you're all staying healthy and hydrated. Let's proceed. Moving on to Libra, we have the Knave of Wands, which is like the page, the Hierophant, and the Magician in reverse. Resistance to change, inability to change. This is really calling out to me right now. In the Knave of Wands, we have an imagery of a goat being sacrificed. I just feel an energy of like laying blame, all the news being blame, not taking personal responsibility, passing the buck, and all that sort of thing. I think Libra is very much sitting in the more meta energy right now, rather than the personal development energy we just came out of. This has a lot to do with the news, I feel. This has a lot to do with the narrative and the report. The Hierophant is usually kind of a positive energy, but it's sort of coming off as a bit dictatorial right now, or a bit suppressive to me. I'm hearing like a barrage. Yeah. Like arrows flying or something like that. Bad news being delivered on the daily, and a sense of overarching stubbornness, or yeah, I think Libras are really stuck on the news right now, or really stuck on response to external pressure. And here, Magician in the reverse is like this inability to transmute, inability to manifest, inability to create positive change and start new momentum. Hearing invocation, there's an imploring, or like an invocation, or a plea. Like, what are we supposed to be doing? Well, what other choice is there? Or how else would be? I think Libras might be having a lot of difficulty visualizing the way forward. I'm hearing like lack of iterations, lack of experimentation. They want to be able to choose from a set of options that seem promising. And right now, the landscape is just seeming very barren of potential outlets or potential solutions. Libra seems to be very problem-oriented rather than solution-oriented. So I'm very sorry if this is an energy that you're sitting in. It's one of very combative, very frustrated, lack of leadership. I'm hearing lack of leadership. Yeah, Libra's just straight on in it, I think, right now, which is okay. It's valid. We hear you. This is absolutely something that we all need to be working through right now and confronting. Questioning authority, demanding answers, looking for leadership. There's a sense of like hypersensitivity or focus on trying to identify alternative leadership, and I'm getting a feeling like it's particularly a little bit biased, but I feel like it's particularly from the scientific community. I feel like Libra is really like, where is the scientific leadership? Where is the scientific answer to the problems that we're having? Because it seems like all we have from the Hierophant is this superstition or this conventional set of answers. And there's a rejection of it. I think Libra really doesn't want to hear that right now. I don't want to hear that. No, I don't want to hear it. Turn the news off, first of all. Second of all, It's okay. There are a lot of avenues for alternative leadership right now. Oh, this is abstract. Here we go. So it's like he's taking on a very significant mantle of leadership. And the work that he is doing right now seems very far off abstract if you just look at the premise, or what he says he wants to achieve, or the target he has chosen on the far end. That in and of itself might not seem relevant to the Libra mission necessarily, but what he has done is created a space for all of these other solutions to be happening, and he's created the conditions for these emergent solutions and emergent answers from a community he has built. So I feel like you as a Libra, that's exactly what you were really looking for right now, is you're looking for leadership, in particular in creating community outlets for other people to be making valuable suggestions. This is a big reach right now, but I'm going to make that reach because this person is a Libra, and while they might not necessarily have a vested interest in what we're doing as of yet, there's synergies that are happening, right? Work is happening in tandem that is on the brink of, like, sorry, I'm getting visuals. It's like on the brink of crossing over. It's like there are a lot of leaders right now who have, I keep hearing Nietzsche quotes. One of them is, I love all those who are as heavy raindrops falling down from the dark clouds onto men, or something like that. So I'm getting this visual of a pond where there are these big ideas, these big heavy rocks of things, that are falling into this pond, and they've created these ripples that are spreading out from their epicenters. And there are things that are happening in the scientific community where these ripples, which have seemed very unconnected, distant from each other for a long time, or have been kind of segregated to their given fields, partly because of, as he will personally attest and feels very strongly about, part of that has been very intentionally kind of segregated into their respective silos by academia, professional organizations, very kind of rigid views and kind of small problems. But now that we're really backing up and taking a look at a very big picture, these ripples are starting to be close to converging from completely different fields. And who I should just say, I'm referring to Eric Weinstein, who is a mathematician who's working on some very, very big physics problems right now. And he's had a lot of problems interfacing with the physics world, and he kind of feels separate from it, is what he's expressed, even though he's totally in it, and what he's working on is completely relevant to it. There's been kind of this period where physics has wanted to keep to a certain narrative or a certain set of ideas, which are a little bit smaller. And he's mentioned feeling like very unwelcome to that. And that's the energy I'm feeling for you right now, Libra, is like feeling unwelcome as a potential contributor, feeling uninvited by leadership, and having your insights valued. And I feel like some of you who might have tuned into this, like, it's heavy stuff, like you're a heavy hitter, right? You have something very substantial to contribute to very systematic solutions. It's very much in line with your mission. I feel like Libra's like, you are super on your path, but you're really looking out for leadership right now and looking for some validation that you're going the right way and looking to be more connected and more networked. And so I highly advise for anyone who is in that headspace, of any sign, but particularly Libras, I would encourage that leadership can be found in Eric Weinstein's portal right now. And there's a lot of really incredible research, meditative. I can't give too much away. I'm actively working on some of this stuff right now, just in case you couldn't tell. But if I get away with some of what I'm working on, it'll have really far-reaching implications in what we're able to do, even given our current isolation and limitations that we have on meeting. And even though there's really unique conditions that have been created right now because of this, and having more time available and having a community come together in this really kind of magical way that it has, even though there's a little bit of time sensitivity to it and specificity, the feeling that we have, a lot of people in the forums have kind of expressed this, is like the solutions that will be created by this kind of radical interdisciplinary interaction and collaboration will be very far-reaching and into the future, and like the solutions that we come up with could potentially be the platforms of tomorrow, or like a completely revolutionary way to go about it. And there is some magic to it where it was created as a direct result of what is happening, and in spite of it, because of it, in appreciation of it. I don't know, it sounds strange to say, but there's a very big feeling of gratitude for each other, respect for each other and the work that they're doing. So if that's an energy that you really want to be a part of and contribute to, there are outlets available for that might not be available on the surface. They're not, the portal Discord in particular might be a little difficult to get to, but there are other ones opening up just within a matter of weeks. This just happened. This is very new, and there's no precedent. It's never really happened before. But there are a lot of leaders in all kinds of different scientific fields, so if, math and physics is not specifically your interest, take some time maybe to go out and look, as Mr. Rogers says, look for the helpers, look for the people doing good, because there is a very heightened state of interface. There's a very heightened state of invitation to people who otherwise felt excluded or disillusioned or shut out from being able to make contributions. There's just this whole situation has also caused a lot of tumult in the scientific community and shaken notions of professionalism or qualification or value. And he says himself, which is mind-boggling to me, Eric Weinstein is like, I don't feel qualified to be messing with this stuff. It's like, if you're not qualified, I don't know what that makes me, but it's so refreshing and inviting to have a leader who is stepping up to say that, and stepping up to say, like, whatever weird idea it is that you have, please lean into it, because it's really needed right now. And like, it's not your place to say that you aren't qualified. That was really empowering for me. I don't know, that I've leaned in pretty hard to that. I put a lot of time in on that, and I never saw myself being interested in things like that. I call myself a metaphysicist, but like it always felt unavailable to me. It always felt like the gatekeeping and the blockages to academia always made me feel like science was not available to me, and these things should be left to the real scientists or whatever. And now everything's in question. There is no such thing as the real scientists, right? If you are doing a science, if you are asking questions, performing experiments, gathering data, noticing patterns, if you're doing anything to contribute or participate, you are doing a science. You are a scientist, right? There is a need for a more open-minded and playful set of questions, right? And we can't keep playing so small. We have to start asking really, really big questions. So his question right now is about a unified theory of physics, and he says it as we're looking for our source code. If humans were to be able to find our source code and start to understand more about, I kind of understand it as like the self-assembling mechanics of nature. What are the implications of that? How do we apply that to our lives? It's a really good question. It's a really big question. I've thought about this at length, and if that kind of stuff is of interest, please just check out some of the platform. Discord in particular has been, kind of the front runner, I think, on assembling these kind of things. But there's plenty of others, and they're growing and changing all the time. We were talking about something called Zoom rooms for the purpose of being able to have concerts and like dance parties and dance together on the meeting stream. Also a good one to follow if you're feeling a bit lost. That's such a... At what other point in history do we sit there and be like, you know what, I really want to be able to have a dance party with my friends on the internet? Like, it's awesome. It's an exciting time. Don't be discouraged, Libra. It's going to be fine. Let's see what your... Ooh. Well, of course. Fede, faith. I think we all kind of know what that means. That has to do with trust in the process. It shows a little doggy here. I just thought I'd point that out, of course, because the dog symbolizes, you know, loyalty and faith in that kind of way. Let me find... Faith. Tradition. Adopt the wisest and noblest ideas. I think you'd also think of that as adopt the biggest ideas. This one got a little ranty, but it's kind of relevant, so... I saw a post from the Buckminster Fuller Institute that was really timely today as well. That was about... I'm going to butcher this. If you're having trouble finding a solution to a problem, you may be looking at too small of a problem. You need to take a step back and look at an entire system point of view. And this post that was made was kind of specific to the spaceship Earth concept and to the ecosystem as a whole. If you're having trouble understanding a pattern that's happening in a microcosm, you need to step back and look at the macrocosm and see what bigger mechanics might be being reflected that you could understand better if you worked a little bigger. So, work big. Does that make sense? Moving on. Scorpio. We have the Three of Wands, Five of Swords, Ten of Swords. This feels like maybe that retrograde energy is sitting kind of heavy for you. Scorpio is sitting in an energy of extreme extreme focus, extreme first principles thinking. Kind of the exact opposite, where Libra is needing to take a very zoomed out point of view. I feel like Scorpio is already kind of looking at this atomic level and looking at very specific. Oh, okay. It's viewed as a battle. What's going on right now is viewed by Scorpios, I think, as like a kind of a fundamental fight. A fundamental... Ten of Swords is like a lot of opposition, a lot of fighting, and an overabundance. Hearing like fight for our lives. I think Scorpio is really kind of tapped into this sort of apocalyptic energy a little bit, which isn't uncharacteristic and it's not inappropriate, but just watch it, maybe. Three of Wands is like a crossroads, like really needing to make a decision, needing to pick a way to go. Whose side are you on? Yeah, that's what I heard. This is kind of the complete opposite flavor of what I've been working on or what's been going on in the Discord and all of that. So we just got done talking about like individual leaders who are stepping up and taking initiative for community forming. There's an underlying narrative to all of that and sort of this meta-level story about these kind of titans. That's how I think of them, as they're like titans of ideas and technology and science and all of these fields. I kind of see them as like... We're going to go down the rabbit hole. You started it, Scorpio. This is your energy. They're kind of like giant monsters in a way. I've been meditating a lot on Godzilla in particular, because that's what I grew up with. But these allegorical, sort of these metaphoric level meta-narratives and stories that the whole art imitates life. It's this trying to find different ways to talk about the thing, trying to find a more humanistic storytelling, relatable, trying to figure out and parse out where we fit into everything and how we fit in this whole thing. And it has a lot to do with, I think, scale, and that's why I like the motif of giant robots or monsters anyway, because it sort of takes you back to that childlike, curious state where, you know, when you're a child, everything is so much bigger than you. Everything seems huge. Everything seems the most important at the time. You're very much in the moment. And, you know, when it comes to doing shadow work and trying to reintegrate the inner child, sometimes it's helpful to, as an adult, try to imagine something so big that it would bring that proportion back into play, or bring that scale back into play, where you feel dwarfed, where you feel small, where you feel insignificant. And so, you know, a lot of the people that are really big proponents of psychedelics and things like that, disassociation, it's because using these things helps you to feel small, and sometimes it's very healing to feel like, you know, a tiny speck in the whole of the universe. Sometimes when you're having problems getting your ego in check or making sense of things, it can help give you a sense of scale. Of course, there's also the reverse danger, which is that you then feel insignificant and jump to the conclusion that nothing you do matters, and that you have no control over or impact on your environment. So, you know, that would be like a bad trip. You have to be careful to... It's not that there's a correct takeaway, but obviously there's one that's more useful, and that is to use it to give a little bit of context to your place in life and place in the totality, which is of a healthy scale, and understanding that there are some things that are just so impossibly big that they dwarf all of us, that they cast their shadow over us all, you know, and that's these huge questions, right? What is the meaning of life? What is the source code? What is the, you know, these kind of huge, lumbering, gigantic questions, you know. And I just heard the one that you're having trouble with right now, that you feel like you're standing in the shadow of, and it's darkening your shadow. It's like overlapping your shadow and making it seem even darker than it would be. Sorry, I'm really deep into the channeling now. I haven't actually ever done it in this format before, so I'm definitely the green rookie reader. I used to read tarot cards 5 million years ago, when dinosaurs walked the earth or whatever. No, back in the day, I used to travel and do it, and me coming forward with a little vulnerability and intimacy, because that is the spirit of Scorpio anyway. I kind of stopped reading because my readings tended to get... I wasn't very good at doing kind of the more fun, or like relationship oriented, or more like, you know, should I get back with this person? Like, I couldn't do any of that, and I couldn't really do a very good theatrical presentation for traveling and doing shows with it. And I was doing it on behalf of a religious organization that I was with, so it was for on a donation basis. It wasn't like something that I was doing for a living, and or anything like that. But there were people that on our crew that would be called on more often, if you know what I mean, because they were more fun, more interactive, and like I could do very good, technical, correct, you know, helpful, insightful, all of those things. Like, my readings were good, and I knew all of the material. My presentation, I think, left a bit to be desired because it was all kind of heavy. I couldn't get into the lighter energies that I think make going to a reader in person more fun. And it got to a point where people trusted me with some really hard questions. And I felt honored and very humbled that anyone would have that kind of trust in me, or that would become that vulnerable, you know. So it was like doing less readings, but the ones that I was having were more intense. And they seemed to be centered a bit around like illness or death sometimes. And I was having a really, really hard time when people would come and ask things like, you know, what do I do? Like, is this person gonna make it? And I'd have to look them in the eye and tell them that they needed to make peace. And that became very hard for me, even though I felt conflicted because it's such an important thing to do. It's such a valuable thing to do. It's such an important and profound experience to have, you know, as a reader, or therapist, or otherwise. But I was also conflicted because it's like, you know, as the reader, it takes a lot of out of you. It takes a toll. You know, it takes a lot of energy to be that channeler, and me kind of taking on that identity as like the channeler, particularly of dark and heavy things. It was like, I don't know if I'm all about this. Like, I feel like someone should do it, but I don't know if it should be me. So I gave it up. It was, you know, I had a good run of that. So it's a little bit weird to be getting back into it now. But maybe that resonates with some of you, or like maybe that's an energy that you're sitting in right now. I think you're a bit, yeah, sitting heavy in this battle energy too. You feel called to respond in a more revolutionary way. I'm feeling like you feel like you're being called to respond in this, I don't want to say, it keeps popping up though, anarchistic. I keep feeling this energy of like you feel like revolutionary. You feel like now is your time. Now's your time to shine, except that it's a shadow energy, so you're like, night is fallen, now we can fight in the moonlight maybe, or in the shadow. It's got this kind of guerrilla tactic energy about it. Please don't do anything too reckless, you know. We're still trying to kind of hold things together, maybe, or not. I mean, I can't tell you what to do. Obviously, you're going to do what you feel is right, but I feel like you Scorpios are maybe sitting in that revolutionary energy of feeling compelled to respond in a shadow appropriate way. And you're not wrong. That would be, you've put a lot of work into integration, into sitting with that, acknowledging your own dangerousness, and now you feel very much called to put that dangerousness to work, or to fight, and you feel like it's a battle, and you feel like there's this overarching battle going on. You've been prepping for this war. You've been prepping for the call. Yeah. But back to the metaphor, I guess, of the giant monsters and things like that, and the shadow of that, standing in the shadows of giants. There is this overarching narrative of it being a battle of ideology, or a battle of how things are going to be, and you want to make sure that your views are adequately represented, and it's very difficult because they're very abstract. But I don't feel that same energy that I just did in Libra of looking for a leader, or you're not looking for a leader, you're looking for a mass. You're looking for an agreement, you're looking for a community, and I just keep getting like a flash mob or something like that. You're looking for a happening. You're like sitting there with your weapon. Here we have that visual with the 5 of Swords. You're sitting on the sideline ready to go. You're fully armored up. You're on the defensive. And he's got both a knife, which is usually, if you watch the other series about the language of astrology, knife is the metaphorical weapon of the id. It's very close range, it's very intimate, it's very precise. But he's also got this giant polearm. Looks like it would be a halberd or something. He's saying, you know, I can do both. I can fight on whatever front. Yeah. I can fight this any way it needs to happen, is what I'm hearing. Geez, Scorpio. There's a need for that. That's valid. Your feelings are valid. This is a very real energy. This is a very real, scary time that we live in. I personally am a proponent of symbolic violence only, of course, and not any sort of fatal resulting violence in the world, but yeah, we don't have a lot of control over that sort of thing. If something were to break out, I feel like you guys are sitting out there with this riot threshold of 0, like you're already ready to go. but you especially would go in on it if other people were doing it. So I want you to be very careful about that and try to not be too overly eager or opportunistic for just whatever starts to flare up. I'm hearing choose your battle. I think the impulses that you're feeling for a need to call to arms, you know, or this kind of militia mentality of like needing to come together and put some muscle in. I think that's can be a very productive energy, although it's a very destructive energy. I think you just need to be very careful about picking that battle and make sure it's not too material, because there's also this whole mental and spiritual aspect to it that's going on right now, right? These battles are being waged over these really big ideas, and there's lots of different battlefields to take up arms on. And so I just feel good though. Like it's a harsh energy, but I'm getting like a very positive energy. It's a very secure energy. Whatever happens, yeah. It's a very prepared energy, because these are feelings that you had to sit with a lot. I get the feeling that, similar to Virgo, like this is already kind of a situation that you've entertained mentally, either through some sort of stoic practice like premeditation of misfortune or something like that. I feel like you've already kind of worked out worst case scenarios a lot in your mind, maybe from ruminating or overthinking, but I feel like you've kind of put in some thought on it, and you've thought about what you would do and what you're willing to do and what lines you're willing to cross, maybe in a way that other people haven't necessarily thought about. I'm hearing find an outlet. Yeah. We don't necessarily need to be like militiaing and flash mobbing. I don't think that's necessarily going to be a great thing as this carries on. But I respect it. I respect your willingness. I respect your dangerousness. And I could see that being put to really good use in an appropriate avenue, and that I just want you to know that there are other avenues to take up this more these more spiritual arms on, and to stand some ground on in this kind of like epic monster standoff sort of way. For me, I'm coping with it on an artistic level. That's been my outlet. Trying to explore some styles and some mediums that I really haven't been worked in a whole lot or been super comfortable with. I keep circling around to this issue of digital art because I'm infinitely more comfortable as a traditional artist, and it's been a struggle my whole life, and I've put a lot of work in over the last couple of years for the purpose of content creation for this channel primarily. But now it's metamorphosing. It's kind of changed to a more collaborative energy, not so much just me off on my own. And I'm working on these art projects kind of with other people, or in this other headspace of like, this isn't for money, this isn't even for my personal work. It's kind of for fun, but it's more... It's not for fun as it's like for a punchline. I keep hearing punchline. I keep feeling like, although the crowd laughed furiously, they could not see the joke. Oh, that's a really old song. Please don't even know what that's from. You're gonna date me right now. Oh no, why did I... I'm a little bit old. It's okay. You'll find a way to act out this spiritual battle. You're gonna find a way to tell this story in a way that transcends time, that becomes timeless. You got kind of this eye for the epic, both in scale and in that meaning of an overarching storyline. And you have a deft ability to put the pieces together, to line the pieces up, put things in their appropriate context. You see a context that other people are maybe not seeing because of your shadow integration, because of your readiness to deal with this. And I'm excited. Like, it's just, this energy is really thrilling me because I'm so excited to see what you come up with. And I think that there's avenues that, short of physical violence, I think that there's avenues that are going to create some really profound and deep content. Another Nietzsche quote for you. When asked what the god Dionysus would want of us, he said, "I would like for mankind to be stronger, more evil, and more profound." At which point he gets elbowed by his consort, Ariadne, and he grumbles and adds, "Oh, right, and more beautiful." I don't know who that's for. Somebody out there, that was a moment we just had, so spooky, but yeah, more beautiful. That's the Scorpio energy, that quote right there. So the Mantegna card that goes with that, of course it was Euterpe, the muse. Very melancholy kind of energy. But inspiration. Listen to the notes everything lets out. I'm feeling like you're kind of more in the space that I was of that artistic outlet. But it's still very battle-y. It's an artistic manifestation, but it's got this overtone of struggle or war, if that makes sense. Moving on. Sagittarius. Okay. Six of Cups in reverse. Knave of Cups in reverse, which again is the page. And Knight of Pentacles in the upright. And the last one, it's the visual is calling out to me instantly. It's got this guy inspecting this horse, and it's just screaming at me, "Don't look a gift horse in the mouth." There's blessings waiting to come in, but you need to find acceptance. The visual that's specific in this deck for Six of Cups is kind of like fantasy or voyeurism. So in the reverse, I'm getting the sense that, like, the emotion was only skin deep. It might not be specifically sexual, but it's got this kind of energy of whether it's friendships or something else. There were things that were only skin deep. There's a mistrust that's been, the seeds have been sown in you because of bad past experiences, and it's really coloring your worldview right now with regards to what's going on, because you're kind of maybe sensitized to betrayal, or no, well, that, but more so, you're sensitized to shallowness. You're looking out at the world right now and what's going on, and you're seeing just shallow, cowardly behavior. You're hearing cowardly. The Knave of Chalices in reverse is like someone kind of drunkenly boasting. It's like gossip, bad emotional news. Yeah. I think this was a very similar energy, I think, to what Virgo had, where there's news and advances that are extremely unwanted, or you're sitting in this energy of like, well, that's nice for you. Thanks for checking in. Wish you hadn't, very unwanted. I'm hearing more behavior. I think it's more to do with your observations, maybe, than specific people who are coming towards you, although you may be experiencing that as well. You're looking out into society and just seeing unacceptable behaviors. You're socially very unhappy right now. I think the isolation might be hitting you a little bit hard, too, because your mobility being limited. You don't like to be stuck with what you've got. You really want the opportunity to be able to go out and get an alternative or get more. But there's these other messages and these other blessings that are trying to come in for you. And it's very much just saying, like, you have grounds for your mistrust. You have grounds for feeling the way you do. But don't dismiss things before they even arrive, because there are really positive things that are waiting to come in, that there is space for, I'm hearing. I think you might be having that same thing like Cancer did with grappling with the previous societal cyclical energy of needing to cut out toxicity, or, you know, having these voyeuristic, petty, gossipy, judgy people that possibly have been cut out but then continued to spread their miasma behind your back. Your ears might be ringing right now. I just feel an energy of like a lot of smack talk and a lot of mistrust because of that, or like an unwillingness to open up or be vulnerable, even in creative endeavors, even in your own space of making use of the time right now, because you want to really plan in secret. You don't want to give away too much, even in publishing or coming forward with your ideas, or being vocal on what's going on with you or your feelings. Like, you just don't even want to open up because you feel like there are people out there watching you, watching what you're doing, waiting to report to others, waiting to they're not listening to you. You feel really unheard. You feel like no one is listening to you. They're only listening or watching or stalking with the intent of responding. They just want to retaliate. They just want something to lash out at. You might be in that energy like I was talking about before, where people were not being compassionate or asking if you were in a space for difficult discussions before, just kind of barreling on in with really heavy emotional, past happening sort of hashing out. And it's making you feel very resentful and mistrustful. And you have to be careful about that, because there are good things on the horizon for you that I think you're blocking. You're building in secret, and I feel like you're being very productive and getting a lot done, and like sitting in your own energy very well, even though you do feel very cooped up. But it does feel like you've given a lot of thought to what you want to do. You just don't feel super comfortable coming forward with it necessarily. Same thing as the chrysalis, like it's just very much in this infant state. And you don't want to expose it to unnecessary hardship, because you're seeing enemies everywhere. You're seeing not scarcity so much, but like depravity. I'm kidding. Yeah, you're seeing unworthiness. It's heavy. You feel personally opulent, and you're seeing undeservingness. And it's making you very hesitant to be too open or forthcoming with what you're actually working on, or what you're actually interested in, or what's kind of lighting your fire right now. But I don't really see any call for you to do that. I don't think you're necessarily losing out on anything by playing it close to the chest right now. Yeah, you're not being called or pressured right now to be too forthcoming, except on leadership. Those who might feel compelled to be take up the mantle of leadership, don't shy away from that. But in other endeavors, such as creative or work or otherwise, there's no pressure to share anything that you don't want to. Just use a little bit of caution about new... I feel like I'm hearing like you're awaiting the Trojan horse, you're anticipating a Trojan horse. Like, any blessing that you get would be met with suspicion, because you're fully expecting it to be full of enemies. Wow. careful about that. It might just be a regular horse, and you sort of like those. So, take that how it resonates. But absolutely no pressure. If what you need to do is keep it to yourself, same as Virgo. Like, if those unwanted advances are messing with your personal sense of security and process, then yeah. Set your boundaries, ignore it. Like, communicate your needs. Then we get the sun. Soul, the chariot. Sorry, the shininess also kind of messes with the camera. Oh, sun chariot. Let's see what this one's up. Common sense. Act clearly and consistently. You're resentful about inconsistency you're seeing in behavior. Because you are a very consistent person and your output's been pretty consistent. You're not producing any crazy surplus, but you're holding it down. Maintenance. I'm hearing maintenance. You've got the maintenance routine down. You're holding your horses. Okay. That's cute. Moving on to Capricorn. What's going on with us? Oh man. Love it. Good stuff. We have the Eight of Wands in reverse. We have the Knight of Wands in reverse. And we have the stars. The Eight of Wands in reverse. I'm feeling kind of a similar thing to the Leo energy. Why can't we have nice things? This is why we can't have nice things. A little bit of resentment, a little bit of blame, a little bit of animosity about being deprived from opportunities to celebrate, to come together. The image in the upright shows kind of a May pole situation, or like coming together to celebrate fertility and abundance. And a group of dancing ladies. I miss those things for sure. But I'm feeling very much like it's a... What are we doing wrong? We know what we're doing wrong as far as the program, but we're having trouble. The Capricorn energy is one of having trouble individually identifying what is going on. Radical self-accountability. Similar to Virgo, like you can't change the world until you change yourself, but I think Capricorn's really struggling with not being able to identify what's actually wrong, or like what to fix, or what to change. I think Capricorn took the whole cutting out thing pretty seriously in that last round of energy. Very critical, very surgical, very final. I'm hearing final. So what else could be left to cut? What else is left to cut? What have I done wrong? There's a radical self-accountability and willingness to own up to wanting to take that change, wanting to admit that there's a problem and start pursuing a solution, but that admission falling on deaf ears, being met with silence. I'm hearing silence. It's weird. Fear, and there's a big fear energy, I think, in the Capricorn energy. Fear that there isn't anything wrong that we can do. It reminds me of a play, I think it was. I think it was a play, I think it was called The Cocktail Party. I could be totally wrong. Somebody come in and school me, please. But there's, in the scene, a psychologist at this cocktail party, and a lady comes up to him, and she's like, "Doctor, I really hope that there's something wrong with me." And he was like, "What the heck? Why would anybody want that? That sounds like a horrible, why would you want anything to be wrong with you?" She's like, "I do so hope that something is wrong with me, because I very much feel that something is wrong. And if there's nothing wrong with me, then it must be that there's something wrong with the world, and I couldn't possibly do anything about that. At least if there was something wrong with me, I could possibly fix it. Control, need for control, feeling of lack of control. It's a big, scary feeling. I'm feeling like a really big, heavy energy of like, oh no, it's not necessarily individual things that are being done wrong now. I'm feeling like this elimination diet kind of thing. I'm feeling like everything has been cut out. All of the variables have been removed. The experiment has been simplified to its basic parts. Anything that was extraneous in like the last year has been removed. So what else could there possibly be left? What's left but me? Does that mean I'm wrong at my core? It's a very scary energy. I think other energies are maybe feeling like there's an abundance of wrong and a difficulty picking one thing. But this is like having nothing to choose from to attack or fix. That is like a problem. I'm feeling like in the Capricorn collective energy there's lots of work getting done. Very prolific and productive time. Having this time perhaps away from conventional work has liberated a lot of people to pursue more of their personal work. But I see a lot of like dark shadow Capricorn energy of overcompensating for lack in other areas with abundance of material wealth or work. And that's not what's desired. And it's causing blockage, not being able to move forward because progress isn't being made in healing in other areas. I mean, and from this Knight of Wands in the reverse, I'm hearing like challenges, attacks, personal attacks. Because usually in the upright, you know, a Knight of Wands would be just a very passionate, secure, brave, you know, individual who's confident and all of that. So in the reverse, it feels like other people's insecurities seem insurmountable. But then we have the star, with stars, which usually is like dreams and wishes and hopes and things like that. One of my favorite cards. And the visual is very beautiful. There's a man standing with some measuring tools and gazing up the stars and documenting and trying to figure it all out, I'm sure. I think it's the same as that energy of like needing to take a wider worldview and look at the macro and try to see a larger pattern. The problem, sorry, here we go. The problem is not apparent at the micro level. There's an intuitive sense that each individual is carrying around part of this problem. It doesn't want to say problem, though. It's trying to call it something else, and I don't know what that is. Everyone's carrying around a piece of the question, maybe. But you're not going to be able to read it unless you zoom out. It's not visible at this resolution. Maybe the resolution is too fine. Maybe it needs to be a little more lo-fi or something, or it needs to be, I hear flattened or simplified or like monochrome. Reflected. Mirrored. Oh. Like it's the wrong way round. Everything is the wrong way round. Maybe it needs to be reversed. The roles need to be reversed. I'm not sure what that means offhand. Let's see what the non-technical card says. I'm not sure what that means. Oh. polynymia is a muse of music. I know it's gonna sound kind of dumb, but like in the set of muses, she is very specifically about instrumental music, I believe. It says, aesthetics. Discover the inner beauty of things. I'm hearing flip the script. How would you flip the script of what's wrong with me? I guess it would be what's right with me. Maybe Capricorn is struggling to see the things that are going right. And looking at the solution is going to reveal the problem. There's a polynymia is like it's like many songs kind of. It's like the totality, you know, it's a diverse. Looking at the multitude of things that is going right will reveal some nuance about what is going on that each individual can correct. Yeah. That's really frustrating. Our energy is kind of harsh right now, I guess. Like, there's a really strong will to take things personally, to deal with them individually and take responsibility and be accountable for change on an individual level. And there's a major blockage to doing that because it's not visible, it's hidden, there's a lack of clarity. Lack of clarity. And not from the question. I'm not sure what that means, but I think that it's a lack of clarity from the zoom point or from the resolution or from the perspective. And the solution has to do with appreciation for a diverse range of solutions. Okie dokie. I will in the future, by the way, be taking a more active leadership role directly as far as directing the Capricorn mission. And the form that that's about to take and the platform is sort of shaping up right now. And it has to do with the other work that I spoke about before, and also just research that I'm doing into it as the mission. And it's a little bit complicated for Capricorn because being so involved with structure and platform and like the interface through which we're doing all of these things, it affects everyone a lot because it's the tool that they will be using. Capricorn has a lot to do with like the scythe, the farm tools, the very basic means of acquisition of raw material. But we're not stuck. Okay. I'd like to move on. I will touch on that later just for our team. I'm not sure which platform I'm going to start utilizing for the quick housekeeping announcement, I guess. We will at some point have forum and chat functions. It's a software that I could plug directly into the website. But it's not really the form that it would take, and I really kind of would prefer for that part of the member tool offerings to be a little bit external. So it's possible that it's going to take the form of something like a Discord, and I'm experimenting really, really heavily with that right now, and there could be something super cool coming out of that, but that will be an avenue through which I can more directly be of service as far as guiding these initiatives and directing the energy into a productive outlet. On to Aquarius. We have the Justice. Knave of Pentacles in reverse, and the Fool. I'm hearing just like social justice, economic justice. I think Aquarius is maybe hypersensitive to the economic implications around the world and the people that this is most adversely affecting. I'm just feeling a very humanistic sort of, not pity, but compassion. Maybe it is pity. Maybe there is a little bit, like, it's a pity. I'm hearing it's a pity. It's a pity because you do really value that human energy in life. We've got the Justice in the upright, but I think it's like it's a preoccupation with it, and I think it's an observation of a lack of it. I'm hearing obsession. Maybe that's something you're thinking about a whole lot. You know, with this this Knave of Pentacles in the reverse is indicating like a really immature, shallow, materialistic energy. And a lot of news surrounding that, or a lot of messages surrounding that. Just a lot of indications of it. A lot of markers. A lot of markers of material insecurity are very visible to you. But then we've got this Fool energy, which is, you know, willingness to try new things, willingness to take a risk, willingness to appear as a fool, and to be bad at something, on the road to getting good at something. I feel like you've been really building up resilience. You were very concerned about social resilience, and in your mind that is an embodiment of justice. You're not really looking at justice from that sort of classic lawsuity kind of way. You're very much looking at it as equality. There's a very common sense energy about it. It's very like, well, it's just the right thing to do. It's obvious. Again, that energy has been pretty consistent. Yeah, it's the right thing to do. Trying something new is the right thing to do. The image is quite comical. It's got this kind of bard figure with a little dog tugging at his cloak, trying to get him to stop singing. No. But I think that kind of bravery is super crucial as a response to the changes that we're going through. I feel like this is saying it's clear that what we've been trying does not work. It's clear it's not working, so we need to abandon the immaturity, we need to abandon the ignorance, and we need to step into a Fool energy of willingness to try new things, and to possibly be wrong and make some mistakes and offend some people's ears a little bit. Social justice requires some insensitivity. That's weird. I just heard the script flip. The script flip. Social justice requiring insensitivity and brashness and risk. Stepping into turbulent waters. It's has some very intellectual dark web kind of vibey energy to it. With Aquarius kind of being the prototypical revolutionary or rebel. I'm just getting a lot of like Star Wars imagery right now. I'm getting like the rebellion is not what we thought. It's like really turning the story on its head. And like the things that were popularly agreed upon have sort of turned out to be not in our best interest or not in our favor. In order to turn things into our favor, we need to flip the script. We need to take a risk. Just refusal. Refusal to see common sense. Refusal to see common good. I think it has to do with like a refusal to work together. I think this has to do with like an energy of willingness to work with your enemies, willingness to forego labels and name tags and titles and boundaries and camps. I'm hearing camps. Leave the camps. Abandon the camps. Ooh. Yeah. Abandon the camps and stand fully on your own. Yeah, I'm feeling like this past energy that we've been moving through that's sort of been revealed by these happenings as not in our common good interest, not in our highest good. We're ones of needing to label, needing to call out, needing to cancel, needing to click. I'm hearing clicks. It's like if everybody feels the need to be a rebel, you know, if everybody is so preoccupied with being unique, then is anything really unique anymore? Like once you have set your mind to being unique, you lose what might have been at the heart of it. Like it's not really about you at that point. It's about needing to stand out. And I'm hearing needing to stand out for financial gain. Wow. That must be what the Knave of Pentacles in reverse is like this the financial pressures shaping and moving the social momentum and the individual identity into these. I'm seeing visuals of like cows being herded or like corralled. I'm hearing corralled. Yeah, the visual I'm seeing is like cows of all different colors, but they're being herded the same. So it's like everybody who thought that they were so independent and doing their own thing, were still bound by this common narrative of needing to profit, needing to make money, needing to have material wealth, needing to keep it on the surface. I'm hearing it wasn't okay to be deep. It wasn't okay to go deep. Yeah, take a leap, take a jump. Let's see what the Montegna card is. Logic. In the corner it shows a little dragon guy again. Common motif in that deck. Being shrouded. Being able to see through a transparent shroud to see that there is something underneath. Lack of clarity again. Lift the veil. Pull the wool off your eyes. Now I'm getting sheep instead of cows. Common sense. Think over problems. Don't split hairs. Yeah. Yeah, Aquarius is very much in that energy of need for common sense, need for a common goal. Need to come together over a common enemy. Ooh, yeah. We're very busy blaming each other rather than attacking the problem at its source or validating the humanity of the people who are adversely affected. And I think Aquarius is very sensitive to that. I feel that. That's a whole mood. Alright, and now Pisces. 3 of Swords. 7 of Pentacles. 7 of Swords. In the reverse. I'm hearing idle hands. Idleness. Yeah, Three of Swords is kind of like a standstill. Seven of Pentacles, the image shows this market stall owner with fruit that's rotting in the sun. They're just here like going to waste. Going to waste. And the Seven of Swords in reverse feels like a threat or a warning in this context. Feeling of lost time in the face of impending struggle, fight, something like that. I'm not sure what to make of this one, to be honest. Yeah, just an energy of standstill, stagnation. Hoping that something is going to come in and break the stalemate. Hearing stalemate. Trying to think your way out of the problem. Maybe more of the rumination problem or overthinking. Trying to think out of the box is what I'm hearing. Oh. Oh, okay. I think I know. I saw a meme the other day that was think outside the box, but the box was crossed off, the word, and it was a photo of a scene outdoors. So it's just think outside. This feeling imposed upon, feeling a rigidity or a structure that is not serving, that is forcing. This might kind of go with the Aquarius energy of a feeling of social injustice as far as the rotting fruit is kind of reminding me of all of the food that's being discarded right now because it's unable to be sold or be transported or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of waste right now. And some companies have taken up the mantle of leadership and taken it upon themselves to acquire those and donate them instead, because there's an absurd, at least in this country, absurdly huge demand and strain on food banks and assistance programs because everybody is really suffering financially. But strangely enough, despite all the scarcity that's being experienced and lack of availability of lots of things, including food, especially with perishability and problems with shipping, somehow amidst this incredible scarcity, we're also experiencing incredible waste. So that was very much the Aquarius sort of energy, but I'm feeling it here too. Feeling boxed in. Feeling bound to this system. Bound to this story. It's really kind of making me flash back to that story of B right now. I hear rubbing our face in it. Insult to injury. An understanding of the interconnection that the waste on one end is causing the scarcity on the other. So I guess I'll go off of that. One of the main things it's really stressed in the story of B as a continuation off of Ishmael is this notion that surplus anywhere in the system is driving overpopulation in another part of the system. And the example that was given of an experiment on rats in a cage was that if you increase the food supply incrementally, the population increases. If there's nothing else to stop it, it just increases with that increment. If it's kept the same, then the population remains the same. And the observation was made that if the population got to a point where it was out of control, but then the food availability was reduced by a negligible proportion, right, compared to what the total population was, if it was done this over a span of time, that the birth and death rates would just sort of cancel each other out, and there would be a natural sort of decline of population without any sort of food riots or like violence or cannibalism or craziness or any post-apocalyptic nonsense. It just sort of naturally declines when the food availability is going down in a manageable way, right? In something that doesn't create and all of the sudden scarcity. But that's the opposite of what we're seeing right now. What we saw right now is like a very sudden, sharp drop in availability. You know, all the photos of the empty store shelves caused panic. You know, we didn't have too much outright, you know, knock on wood, we haven't had too much rioting outright or looting or craziness like we saw with Hurricane Katrina or something like that. But the crisis situation caused an uncharacteristic sudden scarcity in the system, and you know, we're seeing a negative population impact that is violent, that is not just a natural aging out. And that's what we really above all want to avoid. I'm hearing that again, could have been avoided. Pisces, I think, though, is having this kind of intuitive understanding of there being a correlation between those two events, the abundance, the overabundance, and the scarcity at the same time in this sort of juxtaposition. I think that's why maybe there's this fear energy of being threatened, feeling fragile. Yeah, I'm hearing fragility, the fragility of the system, the limitations of the system. The box keeps coming up. So we're within this box, we're within this closed system, right, that is our whole planet. And of course there's things like, you know, things deposited by asteroids and things that do from other places come in and affect us in some types of ways, but as far as the ecosystem, it needs to be looked at in its totality. And one thing that was really trippy for me, and I'm having to think through really hard in this book, is the notion that when surplus is created in one part of the system, it affects the entire thing. So the postulate is that overpopulation in places like Africa that don't make sense because there is a shortage of food and there are these frequent famines and there's this food availability crisis, that is directly caused by overavailability of food elsewhere in the system, regardless of whether it's actually getting to its needed place or not, whether the distribution is completely failing or not, you will still see an increase in population. And that's a hard pill to swallow, and I think that's kind of the most revolutionary part of the book, and why B is labeled as the Antichrist. And that's the thing that flies in the face of all of the establishment, all the convention, all of that sort of patriarchal Saturnian energy that seems to hinge on a combination of power over, totalitarian agriculture, and that sort of manifest destiny, will to colonize, will to dominate all life, belief that our way is the only way and the right way, and imposing that on other cultures around the world, you know, and committing atrocities and genocides and things like that in the name of living in this way. Yeah. So it's a hard pill to swallow. I think the energy is that of Pisces really grappling with an intuitive sense of that, having difficulty vocalizing. If you are struggling with that, I highly recommend like this book and others like it. Like if you're really finding it hard to get into a creative energy space, or you can't express yourself in the way that you want to, sometimes just reading prolifically, just read a lot of stuff or expose yourself to a lot of art. It's very well worth it to take the time to do that, even if it's not you know, among the common recommendations as far as, you know, if you need to vent, you know, journal or talk to someone or do an art or whatever, it might be kind of counterintuitive to take things in rather than put things out when you're feeling like you're ready to burst. If you already feel like you have thoughts and emotions to bursting, it's like the last thing you would really want to do is put more into your head. But there's something, I think, extremely healing and calming about reading great works. I mean, obviously, you really want to be careful. I think especially Pisces struggles with issues of dopamine and overstimulation, and they tend to hold on to things. There's like a holding. Maybe that's where the box is coming from. It's like you have your life box that's full to burst already, that's got all these things in it, you know, and they're rotting away, or they're not being put to be good use, or they're being wasted. So maybe besides the societal implications, there's maybe a personal feeling of suffering, of your own talents or your own creativity or your own dreams being wasted during this time because there is no movement. But I think the antidote for that is actually to take more in, but make sure it's of a high quality, you know, and expose yourself to stories that'll help you get your own narrative straight. I've been struggling with that a lot personally. I'm not, you know, this is in no way a judgment on anyone or a mandate or anything like that. I'm saying this because I need to be firm with myself, and I had really put off finishing reading Storybeat because I have 2 gajillion things going on right now. And they all are demanding my full attention and want to cut to the forefront of the line. But I've been making a really conscious effort to read for like half hour every night. And I found, paradoxically, that the answers to a lot of my problems or the things that I've been trying to work through were like, they were just there. Like, I would flip to another chapter and there'd just be something sitting there that was just like, this is actually about this totally other thing you're working on right now. By the way, in case you were curious, and I'm just like, actually, I was curious. That's really great to know. Thanks, book. You know, I feel like all this insane upwelling and pressure of like, I need to get all this work done. I need to get all this, put all this out here. I need to create all this content, you know, and I can't even keep up with my own schedule of what I need to be doing. So trying to make time to appreciate what other people are doing, or to sit in gratitude, for example, or to read. My instinct, my guts are like, it's work time, it's not study time, but sometimes part of working smart, not working hard, does have to do with taking advantage of the mistakes that people have already made and the learning that they've already done and put out there, which you can then apply in your own life and save yourself some time, because that's what makes us so unique as human beings, is we can learn from one another in this really amazing way that we've evolved to do. And part of what that does is it extends our lifetime by any order of magnitude that we want to. And there's a little, you know, there's a little bit of immortality kind of to it, because if you read great works and you study people who have gone through lots of iterations or lots of trials, you know, and been able to articulate that well, then you're gaining the benefit of their whole life of struggle in a very short span of time, whatever it takes you to read about it, right? And it's like time travel. It really is. It's like, it's a magical thing that goes on, you know, reading and getting this glimpse into someone else's life work. Maybe that's helpful. Let's find the other card. Apollo. Apollo, the chief of the muses himself. Wow. Love this card. Adore this card. Maybe he's under the muses, of course. Detachment. Control feelings without repressing them. Detachment. I think detachment and context for Pisces will come from watching the watcher. I think you've already spent, this is just the impression that I'm getting, you've already spent a lot of time and energy in introspection. You've been sitting with your feelings, you've been processing and grieving and purging a lot. And I think, we're not really seeing any water here at all for you because, right, because you have to look at what there is, but also kind of what there's not, or like the space that's been left. And I feel like you've already really been processing it on that level, and sitting with the emotion. So I think you're now being called not to pass a judgment on the emotion, or not to not to repress, not to box again, not to even try to name the emotions, because like a lot of common psychological kind of technique has to do with applying precision of language and adequately labeling your emotions and being able to sit with them and acknowledge them for what they are and separate them from one another. And sometimes that's extremely helpful. But I think in your case, that's not what is being called for here. I think you have to be careful about baggage. You're already carrying so much. And paradoxically, even though your arms are already full and your heart is already full to bursting, the universe is sort of beckoning you to take in a little bit more. So I would highly recommend, if you're not familiar with the message in the bottle technique. I used a lot when I'm really stuck. It's especially easy now with how bountiful the internet is, You can go down a rabbit hole and get pretty far just with searching. So that's one way to do it. You do want to be a little bit careful with that right now. Of course, you might pull up something deeply triggering or, bad news or something like that. A safer and sometimes more profound way, as I was saying earlier with the book, answering a question I didn't know I had. That's such a good quote. Internalize that part. The story is a answer to a question that you didn't know you had. That's the purpose of storytelling. That's a really great quote. But what you can do is take any book, flip to any page, just whatever feels natural, whatever feels right, and put your finger down on a word. And if it's vibing, follow it down the rabbit hole and see where it goes. See if that might have something to do. Use it as a journaling prompt. Follow it. Follow your curiosity. See if it sparks any sort of questions within you. It's amazing where a single word can take you. Because I went down the rabbit hole with that yesterday. Same book. It brought up a word I'd never heard before, and I had been struggling with a completely unrelated problem of it had to do with music. And it turned out that following that, it was just like I had no idea how much I needed that word. It was a French word, and like I'd kind of like narrowed my focus that I was looking for some kind of like Old English word or something like that. And I was totally off. I was completely wrong. I was like, oh no, it's a French word. It's one of those where it's like so thoroughly hijacked or kidnapped in English, right? That you just take it as it is, and there's no equivalent, and it just means what it does, and it's just like, okay, this is ours now. It's one of those kind of ones. And it changed my whole day. It really just completely changed the trajectory, because it was like, it wasn't something that was on the front burner. It was not something that was like really pressing to get done necessarily, and it wasn't super impeding progress to other projects or anything like that, but it felt like this huge weight. I felt like by spending that time reading, I had actually been able to lay a bunch of bags down, because it was just one thing out of the way. It was just one thing done. It was like, okay, well, that decision's made. Now we have more information, and we can just save that whole bit of work I was trying to do. I was trying to work through it very intentionally, and it just didn't need to be. It was just like, no, that was the joke the whole time. So now, thank you all for bearing with me. I will try to timestamp them in the description, but also if someone could timestamp down below, sometimes that's easier to view on the phone and stuff. That would be really helpful. So we're going to take, I'm going to take a photo of all of this for your reference and post an overhead shot. And we're going to take a totality of all of the elemental cards and see what the distribution is, and that's going to give us a result from the Stellar Fable Oracle by me. Okay? Ooh, this is so exciting. This is the Stellar Fable Oracle deck, which I illustrated and have written. And this is the first time it will be used in a reading video. I would like to take an extra moment here to set some more intention, to pray, and to give thanks. So if you would like to express your gratitude, please feel free to join me right now. We thank you, Spirit, Source, Creator, for making this beautiful world which we live together in and enjoy. We thank you for this time together, for the blessings that we share. And I call upon the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, to help us to create conditions conducive for pursuing our highest good. Please help us to come together in perfect love and perfect trust, to pursue solutions for a sustainable future, to create abundance for everyone all over the earth, for all life. And so it is. And although the Kickstarter itself was unsuccessful due to the timing of events, it was not ideal, but I think it's actually a good thing, because that saves me a lot of fuss with not having to personally manage the order fulfillment, and I'm going to be pursuing publishing through a traditional publishing house. And so hopefully it will be available in the not too distant future, and it might even be cheaper and easier to get and have other advantages. Of course, because of this, we won't be able to have the special edition version or any of the customization I was hoping for through a Kickstarter, but you know what? That's just fine. We're going to move it right along. I learned a lot through the process, and I definitely am glad that I at least attempted it that way, even though it was pretty nerve-wracking. So, a little personal note there. We're going to pretend that you're sitting right here with me, and we're going to pick one out together. Okay. So please point to, on your screen, in your cyberspace, the one that you think I should pick. And then suspend your disbelief a little bit and pretend I just picked that exact one, okay? Was this your card? Yeah. Camel. Camel spirit. So this is the little practical piece of common sensey advice for the collective that I'm pulling to summarize the entirety of this reading. And this is the book. Camel. Story time. Endurance, steadfastness. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Just when you think that you've had all that you can take, the last straw threatens to break you. Hold fast. Draw from your reserves. You've saved up for this, and you might find pockets of strength inside yourself if you look. If you come up short this time, take note of what you needed, and plan your provisions accordingly in the future. This life is a journey, not a sprint. Dig in and commit, even if it seems like such a long way to go. If you get started, you will have conquered the very hardest part. Just as life's little troubles and inconveniences chip away at you, and over time can push you to your breaking point, you can dish it right back out with your personal progress. As the desert throws everything it can at you, luring you with the false hope of an oasis, or battering you with sandstorms, just keep moving forward even a little bit at a time. As long as you don't lose your way and keep moving forward, your endurance will pay off in the end. Now, if that's not spooky, I don't know what is. I'm only doing one recording of this, by the way, so that's our collective message for dealing with the, isolation. Camel. And now, one of the most unique features of this deck, besides having the full explanations like that for every single card, there's 80 cards in this deck, there's an additional mechanism by which you take the total of the elemental suits, either of the cards in this deck, or combine it with a tarot deck or something else, to get a total overarching story, and we're going to explore that right now. Warning, some of them are really happy and nice, some of them are a little post-apocalyptic. I have no idea what we're about to get, but it took the totals from all of the cards that we pulled for this reading, and it went water having the most, then fire, then air, then earth. So let's look up which one that is. This one. On the brink of a tremendous discovery, a scientist surges with adrenaline and excitement. The implications of his findings are utterly lost on him in this moment. His muse drives him ever onward in pursuit of truth. This is, in and of itself, not a bad thing, as no science is truly evil. It is simply a knowing of the world. But this forbidden knowledge is to fall into heartless hands. In the hands of a child, the truth is like a bright red string, eye-catching, tempting, being threaded between the fingers to form lines and shapes. Then he holds it out to the onlooker for them to admire his cleverness. "See how cool this is," he says. The onlooker simply smiles and nods, unaware of the dangerous weapon this child holds in his hands. So the boy continues to show and tell to whoever who will divulge some enthusiasm. He finds that admiration in the menacing grin of an evil man hell-bent on destruction. The innocent play of a child falls away to reveal terror and shame as the truth finally dawns. So I guess because we're doing this as a video from me, we can have a special little explanation, which is my thought process behind the entry. That entry was inspired by the book Cat's Cradle, written by Vonnegut. And that book is a sci-fi interpretation metaphor, basically for the invention of the atomic bomb and for the Manhattan Project. And the red string alluded to is when you do the cat's cradle thing with the string. That's the imagery that's used throughout the book, and I've seen this imagery a lot in art, and it always really catches my eye, and it's like this kind of provocative call sign of like there's something deeper going on here. And I kind of interpreted it as a little bit sinister, because for me, scientific discovery, it's such a fine line between something deeply profound and something that can really positively benefit all of humanity and something destructive. And I think with nuclear technology in particular, here we have this potential to have this thing that could create, boundless energy for all of humanity, and yet it's had all of these horrific side effects. So it's this dual-edged sword, and it's very hard to be in the position of someone possessed by the muse or possessed by the truth, And obviously it's something that exists in nature, it's something that's available, it's something that could have happened. It didn't have to be weaponized, but that seemed to be part of our narrative in some way, or part of the free will we exerted and the choices that we made. So I was really touched by that book personally. That one's very spooky. I highly recommend everybody read it. It's quite good. It influenced me a lot in my writing as well. Because, for kind of a different reason, when I was reading it, I kind of had a full lens of assumption that it was about Oppenheimer, and I identified really strongly with that because I was researching that very deeply at the time. But later on, when I was doing research for my book and I was looking into a similarly destructive technology called cloud seeding, I thought I had so many notions. Like, no one's ever talked about this, so I just really didn't know, and it was really heartbreaking to kind of go through this research process. But I guess Spirit has brought us here for a reason, right? So I might as well make myself vulnerable in this way. So I didn't know that that was something that was ever actually done. I thought it was kind of a hokey, like, pseudoscience-y thing, you know, that people had kind of messed with, but I didn't really understand that it had at some point been weaponized and implemented, and the place that it was weaponized and implemented really hits really close to home for me, and it was difficult. It was really hard to deal with, because it was weaponized and used in the Vietnam War, with the intention of extending the monsoon season to hinder the Viet Cong and enable greater loss of life on that side. And the chemicals that are used are horrific, of course. Like, the whole thing is just as bad as you would think it is. And that was really shocking. I just hadn't heard about that before. It seemed so unreal, you know. But then it got really weird, because when I was reading about the chemistry of it and who had been researching, like, what crazy madman is the scientist on this job, you know, of course, is the question that comes up. And because the universe has that sense of humor, it turns out that this was being researched by Kurt Vonnegut's brother. And when he had written Cat's Cradle, it wasn't actually inspired so much by the nuclear technology that it seemed to be. That was part of the inspiration, of course, being a novel, being sci-fi. It drew inspiration from many sources, but it was actually a much more personal story than I understood it to be, and that the catastrophic technology talked about in the book had been based a little bit more on this cloud seeding thing and its use in Vietnam. And because I personally, in fact, my uncle served and is now fighting symptoms, eye damage, and, you know, who knows what else from exposure to Agent Orange by his own command, by his own country. And to me, that's a whole huge thing. It's a whole huge betrayal. It's something that, you know, we as a family having to deal with and having to internalize and having to cope with. It's very personal. And yeah, it's a very strange moment, you know, when sometimes you feel so small and unrelated, and then other times the universe kind of sends you a synchronicity that makes you aware all of a sudden that your choices are very impactful, that everyone's choices are very impactful, and actually all of this sort of in some way has to do with you. So that's an interesting warning to be issuing to us right now. And I'm finding it particularly spooky given what I'm working on. But this little fable here having to do with not following the call of science so closely that you don't notice when malevolent eyes are watching and looking to weaponize, or like looking to put it to malicious use. You know, in this time we're coming together to address this challenge, you know, to address this thing that's hurting us all, and we need to face together the solutions that we're going to be coming up with at some point may be falling into enemy hands in a way, or falling into malicious hands and being used in a way that they weren't intended. So it's going to be on us to remain vigilant, even as we are fighting these incredible battles and striving so hard towards these very big titanic questions like we talked about in some of the earlier readings. You know, there's always that danger in evolution that something that we uncover might potentially escalate to a different problem. You know, we might solve one problem, and in our cleverness, in our inventiveness, in our ability to channel the muse, but it might be that the solution we come up with actually escalates the drama of the next act or the next crisis. But that's the way of it. We have to accept that very deeply, and we have to sit with that. Part of that means learning from history and learning from the mistakes that have already been made and the ways that technology has been misused up to this point, and sit with that and honor that and listen to the stories of the people impacted. But also we have to exercise a very deep and personal acceptance of the potential that will be us, despite our best intentions. Oppenheimer is not an evil man. He meant well. And to share a personal story, hopefully I don't choke up too much. This kind of came up again, this cat's cradle energy, when I was traveling, and I went to Venice, and I went to an exhibition of artists from all around the world, and it was very good. It was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. One of them really touched me, and it was just it was a blank room. It was a installation style, or it was experiential. It was a blank room, and around the walls there were hanging these paintings. It was like painted on, I think, a canvas, just a rigid canvas, but it was cut out into the shape of these lab coats. And all around the room, these were hung, a painted lab coat with the name tag of one of the scientists working on the Manhattan Project. And as you walk into the room, the audio is of Oppenheimer reciting from the Gita, which is a quote that's always really shook me to my soul. I really have a hard time with that, as Hindu. It means something completely different. I think when you are actively, I don't know what the word is I would want to use for my personal relationship with Shiva, walking in the shadow of. There's better language for it, not in English, but essentially, when you are in that honoring that, I guess, or like aware of that, pursuing that. Sorry, tripping on words. It's hard when it's like your personal religious experience, but it means something very different to a Shaivite. And I was terrified. I don't think I've ever been so scared. It just came over me. I walked into this room. There were lab coats all around, except for the far end. The painting of the lab coat, instead of being hung, was crumpled on the floor. And the name, of course, was Oppenheimer. And I broke down crying in public. I don't do that a whole lot, but I didn't care at all, that there were people around me, nobody stopped or said anything. It was kind of embarrassing to be in a foreign country bawling your guts out over something so abstract, but it touched me in a way that nothing really ever has. It called into question and put at odds my relationship with Shiva and my relationship with my past, I guess, my ancestry, science itself. They were, at war in this way, and I was between them, trying to understand what that meant about us and where we're going and what we're supposed to be doing. It was a very intense moment. So, I'll share that with you, that moment of intimacy, I guess. As I've tried to grapple with these things, we are all called to grapple with this. This very real concept in metaphysics that there is no ultimate victory of light over darkness. There is always going to be that battle. We are always going to be the ones caught in the crossfire of that timeless struggle, and that there is no ultimate victory of one over the other or conquest of one over the other. Neither will ever be fully extinguished, and this cycle of well-meaning in scientific pursuit followed immediately by misuse will go on forever. And it's a hard pill to swallow. But that's not to say that we don't still have agency and that we don't still have choices to make, and we can't forge our own story and choose how it goes down and respond to it appropriately and try to do what we can to minimize the suffering and to keep missteps, miscalculations, unexpected results from creating hell. There's always going to be suffering. Suffering is eventual, it's essential part of life. It's how we learn, it's integral. But we as human beings have an ability that I don't think any other animal has, and that's to take suffering and turn it into hell, to multiply it, to see hardship and inject cruelty. We are capable of cruelty in a way no other animal is, I think. And we have to confront that. And I don't think we win in the end, but our attempts to fight it are what define us and make us who we are. And that's worth it, even if it feels futile, or even if the lack of the potential for an ultimate victory does not invalidate the heroic pursuit of truth and justice and, I guess, good, light. So there, you got some bonus philosophical musing nonsense at the end, too. Man, you have really gotten the total package from me today. This was a really exciting format. I've never done this before. I don't know that it'll ever be done again. We'll see. If this is something that created use and value for people and they'd like more of that, then I would be happy to acquiesce. Let me know in the comments how it resonated. Any of your thoughts about any of the topics touched upon. My ultimate goal is that this is not going to be the format, for the discussion part at least. I don't really find YouTube comments to be particularly useful most of the time, I would really prefer that we have a community for discussions on these issues, and that it's more of an exchange and it's not just But I'm working on organizing that right now. It's on my big old to-do list along with a gajillion other things. But I thought it was worth it to take the time to do this, and I'm glad I did, and I hope you enjoyed this time with me. Thank you so much, and truly, from the bottom of my heart, I hope that you're all out there well and safe, and your families are as well, and, I feel very deeply in my soul all of the losses that we've endured, both, of people that we'll never be able to see again, of businesses, of ventures, of forms, of dreams, of all of these things that have been casualties of this crisis, So we need to take the time to make space and heal from that, but I hope that in the space that we've created, there will be room for something better in the future. And I'm sending my love and compassion to every single one of you.